it's too warm outside?
Why do we turn away as the water starts to rise?
Why do we push others down as we're floating in the tides?
So what's the point in waiting if we just don't have the time? But we're standing in the fire. We can put it out if we keep on shouting. So show me you got the power to change. If it shines or showers, nothing can get in your way. The world is ours. We all do wrong. We've got to fix our faults before we criticize. It all starts with you. What's the point in choice if we can't decide?
And we know it all along. It's all our fault that we close our eyes. We can hit restart. All you gotta do is look inside.
You got the power to change. If it shines or showers, nothing can get in your way.
Welcome to the Stream-Aid Live Monday Night Takeaway. A great work, team. A show in which a collection of communication experts will join together to filter out the noise and get to the heart of the biggest climate issues and explore what we and our businesses can do about it. Our team is made up of specialists from the world of technology, social media, marketing and advertising, and I am delighted to be able to host the conversations, facilitate the chat in my very human-centric way. We'd love the audience for you to get involved. Whichever platform you're watching the show from, get involved, put your thoughts, your ideas, any takeaways that you're taking from the show, put it in the chat. Get stuck in. This is a conversation that we can't do alone. Global conversation required, global activity required for such a global problem. Our group is designed to tackle our climate emergency. The intro music that you heard was by the amazing Jacob Reddy and Nova Story, a tune that they put together specifically for the Stream-Aid Live cause. If you want to find out more about Stream-Aid Live, check out streamaidlive.com. Check us out. Check out the movement. Get involved. Click where you need to click and join those ever onward conversations. Between us all, we need to tackle this global problem that we have by encouraging a global and proactive conversation. And I'm joined this evening, delighted to be joined this evening by the StreamAid team of Mr. David Bell, Mr. Keith Smith, and Ms. May King Tsang, who've all been filtering through the chaos to bring you glimpses of genius and plenty of takeaways too. How are you doing, team? How's it going?
Yes, very well, thank you. Very well. Yes, not too
All
bad.
good, all good. Everyone excited?
Doing some crazy air guitar work behind that song. Fantastic.
I saw you. I was sitting here, Keith, while everyone was watching the song. I saw you playing that air guitar, strumming away, banging the drums.
Yeah.
I was going to put you live in the studio for everyone to see, but we'll do that later.
I think the outtakes definitely worth viewing for sure. So all four of us, we're going to take it in turns. We all have something to share with you, the lovely audience, and ideally, the thing we share will spark conversation and proactivity, and plenty to take away. So I'm going to start the clock. I'm going to get us going. I'm going to do a book review. I've been reading, and I must admit I haven't finished it yet, but I've been reading Merchants of Doubt. Okay.
Great
So and if you're watching, authors of Merchants of Doubt, please correct me if I get your name wrong. Naomi Oreskes and Eric Conway. All right. It's how a handful of scientists obscured the truth on issues from tobacco smoke to global warming. I'm going to cover the chapter on global warming this evening. Anyone concerned about the state of the democracy in America should read this book, says Al Gore. So it's got an American focus, but the problems that they explore are global. First of all, the book is superbly researched. Right, these two know exactly what they're talking about. There's 64 pages of notes on their sources. I can't imagine the amount of articles, research, documents that they would have gone through to create a book of this caliber. However, it's very difficult to read without getting bloody angry.
Yeah.
Right. I'm reading it and I'm fuming. Okay. So the chapter about global warming. Okay. Scientists, right? We know this is the case, right? Scientists have agreed beyond doubt about the reality of global warming and its human consequences since about mid-1990s, right? Almost 30 years. Without a doubt, science has said this is the issue and us humans are to blame, right? Way before that, they knew something was wrong, okay? And they were working on trying to work out exactly what it was and come up with solid science. The science is in, okay? However, decades of doubt spread by a few scientists, and our authors name them, right? Encouraged by governments, fossil fuel companies, and the media, have left us way behind the curve in solving global warming, decades behind where we could have been.
Yeah.
And the saddest thing about it is we're still battling climate naysayers, right, who for some reason have still got a voice, whereas they should realistically be holding their heads in shame. However, governments and media organizations are complicit in this spread of misinformation, right? And it turns out greed has won over solid scientific legitimacy. Right, still the case today. You go down to your local pub, walk into a coffee shop and say, "Oh, what do you think about climate change?" You'll get responses from, "Oh, I think it's a hoax," or "It's been blown out of all proportion," or "It's something for the hippies to moan about," or to outright apathy.
My favorite one is this is just all part of the Earth's sort of natural cycle.
Yeah, anything that either means we don't have to worry too much about it or don't have to do anything, right? And the science disagrees with all of the horseshit that people keep spreading. Right? Our governments, big business, media are to blame. David, let's play a quick video segment. Let's get a glimpse of what big business is up to.
Let's have a look at it.
We at Chevron believe that nothing is more precious than life, and that the most precious life of all is the dead kind that has been compressed for hundreds of millions of years under massive rocks until it magically becomes oil. Oil that we can refine and sell as gasoline, so a cool-ass tank can crush a clay hut, or an airplane can take a businessman 3,000 miles to have dinner with someone, or whatever, all the while releasing greenhouse gases that are transforming the planet right this second into a hellish George Miller film. Because at the end of the day, we at Chevron straight up don't give a single fuck about you, your weird children, or your stupid ratty-ass dog. And we have billions and billions of dollars to pay for this commercial time, this cheesy footage, and this bullshit music. All so that you will be lulled into a catatonic state that makes you forget one singular fact. Chevron is actively murdering you every day. See, the human brain can only deal with so many things at once, so these emotionally loaded scenes will always push aside other thoughts like, Chevron is murdering me. It's just how our brains work, you meat puppet who exists only to feed us profits. Chevron. It's hard to even comprehend how little of a fuck we give about you. And this commercial also applies equally to Exxon, BP, Shell, our delinquent lapdog media, and any hack politician who's trading the future of life on this planet for filthy money and oil stocks.
I suppose we should apologise for the language in the video. Apologies if you're offended by that, but there is a very good, harsh message coming through there. I just thought I'd get that in because before we get banned on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, I just thought I'd get the apologies out there first.
All right, ban us if you like. All right, we'll come back in some other form. So the gist of the ad, absolutely right. Okay, so governments, complicit. Media, complicit. Big business, certainly those big businesses, absolutely complicit. Okay, and the point I took away, right, the big point I've taken away, and this will resonate certainly with those in the UK, okay, even though our audience here is global. If governments, if the media, if big business wanted to mobilize the planet to do something about global warming, it could.
Yeah.
Okay. And an example, okay, of mobilization. Okay. A few weeks ago, the UK lost our dear Queen, right? The Queen died. Okay. We instantly entered a period of mourning. Very quickly, a bank holiday was organized for the date of the funeral. Every single paper, every media outlet was dedicated to coverage of the death of the Queen. Most businesses put posters in their windows, messages on their website of huge respect for the Queen. Channel 4 stopped advertising on their channel. People queued, normal people queued around the clock to pay their respects. Billions of people got involved instantly the moment the Queen passed away. Now, the planet is also dying. But for some reason, there's not the same mobilization.
Wow.
And I wonder why not.
You put it like that, Nick. That makes it a very compelling argument, actually, I have to say. It's, and it is true, isn't it? I mean, you know, why? How can we rush to action when it's something that means so much, and yet we're ignoring probably the most important issue that's facing us? We're just kicking it down the road because companies are telling us not to worry about it. Yeah,
and I tell you, if you've got a stomach for it, read the book.
Yeah,
because it's so frustrating. But yeah, the point, just pointing out, here are issues, we know about them. However, here's some other media stuff that will either throw you off the scent or give you something else to think about.
There was a movie I watched recently as well called The Trick, which is the UK focused version of the same thing, which is about I forget who it is, and I should have done my homework, but it just occurred to me that he was a scientist that came out about climate change about back in the 80s, and was shouted down by all the sort of the same lobbying groups, and they made his life a misery, basically absolute misery for about 10 years. and called him a hack scientist and all this. And he was the one that came out and said, planet's heating up, and nobody listened to him. Just such a shame. It's a great movie, though.
Yeah, and it's still happening. Happening today. So my takeaways, and we can discuss these by all means. First of all, some healthy skepticism. I've learned some time ago, and this book's just reiterated it, that read beyond the headlines. Ask yourself the question, who's saying this? Why are they saying it? Just question stuff a bit more in a bit more healthy way. And for me, I'm struggling to answer the question, why no mobilization for this global problem?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
It's a good point. And I think it's worth bearing in mind. I mean, I've read the book as well, Nick, and I think it's a good idea. Once you've read it, when you read stories about positive or negative about the climate, then it makes it easier to put them into a compartment and say, okay, that's come from the anti-climate group. These have come from the activists or whatever. It's obvious. It makes it more obvious to see because you understand their playbook, and I think that's the important part.
Yeah, knowledge is power, especially if you do something with that knowledge.
And do your research.
Making.
I didn't get the chance to read it, but I did have a question. I mean, you did mention about, there wasn't. I mean, you mentioned your key takeaway, but were there any actions that we can take as as individuals? I know you pose a question of no globalization, no movement like similar to the Queen's funeral, but was there any insight into what we can do?
Yeah, I wish there was some answers. I haven't finished the book, so Keith, tell me if we've got a list of things that we can do. But it was lots of information, that's for sure.
Thanks for chucking that at me. But
No problem, yeah.
what it made me do, I think, is question everything a little bit deeper. I mean, I think this was part of my path to partial enlightenment. Was now I'm able to read stories and understand why these things, because it puts it into context. You can see why, people are saying, well, eating beef doesn't cause problems. You can see why, because there's so many millions and millions and millions of dollars tied up in the farming business. They don't want change to happen, but change must happen. And I think just do what that does is it makes you just do your research. Just check again, check the facts. You read a story before you say anything, before you go down the pub and start, passing it on to other people. Just go and do some research. Find 2 or 3 articles that back it up. I think that's the important part.
And we should be all doing that. We should be checking our facts, checking the information, doing our research, our own research as well, because the media are very good at telling the stories that we want, or they want us to hear. And it's not always factually correct. And there's always possibly, some little white lies in there, or maybe some big lies. So I always say, read books, get that knowledge, speak to the experts, find out, different opinions, and make your own choice through the information that you gather and you go through. Don't just listen to what you're told, because sometimes it's not factually correct, it's not accurate, and it might take you down the wrong path.
Yeah, that's a good point, David.
Thank you, ladies and gents. I'm mindful of time. So, Keith.
Yes, sir.
On tonight's show, what have you got for us? What have you been up to, and what are your takeaways?
Okay, well, I thought that it'd be interesting just to summarize. I mean, I'm sort of my superpower is podcasting. So I've had a couple of interesting guests on the podcast that I thought I'd pass on some information to save you having to listen to every show. But I mean, since we last met up, I mean, I've been busy sort of doing the Fuel podcast, and Fuel is a podcast for the UK and the American advertising world, and we interview celebrities from the world of marketing and stuff about the issues that affect the business. Now, stuff that we've looked at in the past shows includes stuff like how the advertising community needs more diversity, why we weren't able to predict the rise of Trump and Brexit and all those sorts of things, and how we deal with things like working from home and all the changes since the pandemic, where, obviously, now the answer to every knock joke is Uber Eats or Deliveroo. Yeah. But the most critical issue we've investigated has been...
We do not have a boom effect. Oh, damn. Sorry, Keith.
Or crickets we needed. Yeah. But the most critical issue we've investigated has been the dilemma that the advertising, PR and marketing community is basically there to convince people to buy more. More soap powder, new cars, travel more, eat more, just more of everything. And unless it's kind of eating bugs or exercising, doing more of everything usually means doing more harm to the planet. So I wanted to sort of dive into the subject. And after a few connections, I found myself talking to two incredibly well-informed experts. And they can all be found. I mean, we've got a whole load of stuff on our YouTube channel. But for the Fuel podcast, I got to speak to employee number 100 at Tesla, and she's the CMO at Impossible, or was the CMO at Impossible Foods, Rachel Conrad, over in Silicon Valley in the great state of California. And I also interviewed the nomadic Viking Gustav Martner, who's the chief creative officer at Greenpeace, who famously earlier this year, he stormed the stage at the advertising industry's awards festival, the Cannes Lion, and gave back his award in protest because the industry is still handing out awards to, the big polluters, the Coca-Colas, the BPs, and the Chevrons. Chevron are going to take a beating today by the looks of things. The fact that as an industry, we're still guilty of supporting this kind of greenwashing and gaslighting sort of industry that you were just talking about as far as the book was concerned, Nick. So I thought I'd share a few expert facts that put a wrinkle in this here old noggin, and to help me understand the sort of scale of the problem that we're facing and how we can solve it. So Rachel Conrad, she's a warrior. She's unafraid. She's unapologetic in challenging the big polluters, and that's big oil and the meat industry, about their insistence that they aren't to blame for this problem. A lot of the conversation was examining the fear and doubt that all the various lobbying industries that you were referring to earlier, Nick, create to muddy the science. And Rachel's job is to just keep pressing the science and to shoot down their arguments. And the meat and fossil fuel industries have got really kind of clever ways of doing this because they've been doing it for decades. But here's a few fascinating facts from the show. Planet Earth has 10 times the mass of Bos taurus, which is the breed of cow that we humans like to eat, than any other wild vertebrate on the Earth. So if an alien came down to Earth, 45% of this planet's arable land is devoted to cattle. They probably think that cows were the ruling species. So that's number one. When doubters tell you that eating beef isn't causing that much harm to the planet, time to think again. And talking of meat, I asked Rachel one of the things that David here raised a few weeks ago, namely that the plant-based food industry is losing out to the meat industry because supermarkets are selling beef and chicken at half the price of plant-based alternatives. People are only going to switch to plant-based burgers, for example, if they, number one, taste as good, if not better than beef. Number two, cost as much, or if not, are cheaper than beef. And number three, deliver the same, if not more, nutritional value. So that's the challenge for the plant-based industry. And judging by my recent encounter with Impossible's chicken nuggets, apart from the price, they've ticked all the boxes. They are delicious, I have to say. The second show that I wanted to discuss was Gustav Martner, because he was talking about why the ad industry keeps handing out awards to the agencies that are big polluters. And I was watching a TV show from 1975 about the last big fuel crisis. And even then, the experts were saying we're too reliant on oil and we need to explore solar, wind, hydro and tidal. But we didn't change. Normalcy bias kicked in and we went back to listening to the fossil fuel industry for the next 50 years. And we could have sorted this out by now, but we haven't. Now look at us. We're buying the lifeblood of the Western economy from despots and dictators. And what Gustav wants to do, what Greenpeace are trying to do, is to implement a fossil fuel advertising ban. And while I'm not sure that's going to be possible, but I think we definitely need to prioritize that every country has two forms of energy supply, which is your homegrown solar, wind, hydro, and all that, and then a redundancy of hydrogen. So I don't think we can actually ban fossil fuels, but I certainly think that we can make ourselves more reliant on our own sort of homegrown energy. So I was just going to toss that one out there. What does everybody think about that?
Wow, some great facts there. Things every day's a school day. I always say that. Every day you learn something new. And I've just added to my box of tricks for the next time I play Trivial Pursuit, some interesting facts. Before we do go on to that, Keith, I just want to, because we've got some artwork here from your podcast, the Fuel podcast. So we'll just pop these up. We're gonna have to peer out the edges because it's gonna kind of, so we just kind of.
That's Rachel Conrad, Queen of Green.
And this one.
And that's Gustav. We love him. Great guy.
Fantastic. Thought we just make sure, do listen to Keith's podcast, by the way. It's fantastic. The Fuel podcast. Lots of great guests. Loads of back. I mean, people could spend weeks listening to it. There's loads of stuff there now.
Episodes now. We're sort of well established now. But I mean, I think the point is that, you know, we, like Nick was saying, we do have the power to do this. Like the song says, we've got the power to change this. We're just not doing it.
Mm.
Yeah, it raises a big question, right? So good on you, Keith. Some real heavy hitters on your podcast and fascinating listens. You're absolutely right. What we could, but we're not. Right? We're not. I challenge anyone in the audience, right? What's your business doing, okay, that is positive for the environment, okay? And chances are most businesses out there, if they're any good, will have some things on the list, right? And probably pulling their hair out and thinking, I'm doing my best, but it's clearly not enough. It needs to be a global movement. So we small steps to encourage, right? Don't vote for a bloody politician unless they've got something along the right kind of agenda, for Christ's sake.
Don't vote for politicians in the UK.
This isn't rocket science anymore, right? This is basic science now. Okay, so we can do a certain amount, but unless we get a bit more active, you know, and up the tempo a bit, nothing will change.
No, I agree. David?
Well, I do want to say something you picked up on, meat eating. Look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I like a good bit of meat, okay?
We had that discussion.
We had this conversation before. You know, I don't eat meat every day. You know, we have a pretty balanced diet. Everything we do have, we cook from fresh. Yeah, we might have the odd takeaway every now and then. But to be honest, that's our once a month kind of treat for us because we like to cook. We spend a lot of time in the kitchen. But I do like a bit of beef. You know, or chicken or whatever it's going to be. And you're right. You know, the problem is I feel today, if we want people to change to an alternative, it's got to taste good. It's got to be as good, if not better.
Absolutely.
It's got to be affordable and available as well. Because, you know, if you go to in the UK here, we can go to Tesco's and are we going to find all these alternatives? Probably not. And I've tried some of the alternatives. I've shared this before. We went away at Centre Parks and we got some fake bacon. And it was the worst thing in the world I've ever had. So it's never going to convince me to switch. But I appreciate we've got to give things time. You know, cost is up here. It will come down eventually once the production methods become simplified. The materials, i.e. the raw goods, become more available or easier to get hold of. So I'm willing to change, but I think it's going to be a gradual change for me. I know some of other people like yourself, you know, have kind of broken a habit of a lifetime and switched. And, you know, I admire you for doing that, but it's not something I'm going to be able to do. And I would also say probably 80% of the rest of the population won't be able to do until the time is right.
No, and I think there's a stunning statistic, isn't there, about the fact that if everybody decided to not have 1 day of not eating meat per week, how much carbon that would save and how much, you know, sort of how much energy that would save. it is a habit that we need to. The thing that Rachel was explaining was the fact that we need to completely re-engineer our energy chain, our food, our human energy chain, because, you know, we got used to the idea tens of thousands of years ago of farming animals, keeping animals in an enclosure and then eating those animals because they were a quick hit of protein. So we need another form of doing that. And it's very difficult to try and convince people to go to do something different. And I think that you're absolutely right, David. The challenge is it has to be the right price. It's got to have all the flavor. You know, people always go, well, why don't you just eat beef then if you want it to taste like beef? That's not the reason we eat meat is because it sets off triggers in our sort of in our brain, the endorphins and things like that. So we need to have all those same things in plant-based food as well. So I'm all for it. And I think those impossible chicken nuggets that I tried recently absolutely blew me away. Superb. If only they were as cheap as chicken nuggets, that would be fantastic.
Have to give them a go. And I will
Mindful of time, ladies and gents. Any thoughts, May King, on Magical Keith's podcasts and these big hitters, which have given us some food for thought?
Not really. I mean, I echo the sentiments of David, really. Until the prices become cheaper, we're not going to be able to get people to change, and change doesn't happen immediately, does it? We've all not just people here, but we've all made a conscious effort to do our bit for the environment, whatever that might be. And I think for us as individuals, we can maybe just stretch to one more thing, and one more thing, and add, and keep going and so on. I think we may have mentioned on a previous show that for me personally, I'm trying to reduce the amount of water that I'm using. So I'm trying to stick to a 2-minute shower. Don't wash my hair as often as I want to, just to preserve. Switching to soaps for washing. Shampoos and conditioners rather than plastic. So doing one more thing. I think that's what we can encourage people to do.
One more thing. Sounds excellent. Excellent advice. Great takeaway. Thank you very much, May King.
I love the idea of a 2-minute shower as well. That's a great challenge to do. You've got to have everything ready, haven't you, May King? That's the whole point.
Yeah. Don't always make it, but no. It's funny, actually.
Challenge. You set the timer, press start, jump in, and we go. You're like, okay, time's up. Turn it off, and out we get.
There was an advert, actually. I can't remember. I think one of the water companies, and so they were giving advice on what people can do, and they advocated a 10-minute shower, and I was like mortified. I thought, well, I do. Let's bring it down a little bit more. But having said that, Rome wasn't built in a day. The fact that they've advocated a time on the shower is a good thing. So, we can't get too shouty about that. So it was good to see.
Here's an idea. How long is Jacob Reddy's song? It's about 3 minutes, right?
It is, yeah. 3 minutes.
Just before you get in the shower, and try and get everything done by the time it finishes. The world is showers.
Yeah. We could dub it. Oh. Absolutely. We're asking to re-record it for us. The world is showers.
There's a show challenge waiting to be out. It might be an audio only. We'll have to see what the response is from the audience. David, what have you got for us this evening?
Okay, so I've dug around in the archives. I wanted to, I say the archives is reasonably current, but I keep an eye on social media. I like to see kind of what's happening around the world. And as I said earlier, the problem is sometimes the media kind of put things out there that might not be quite accurate, might not be factually true. So sometimes the best way to get this, because everybody has in their pocket these days one of these, and you hit the record button and you can live stream anything from anywhere. So what we're finding now is that people are using these to their advantage. Now, look, I'm all up for people having a voice. I'm a great believer that all business owners, everybody should have a voice at whatever level that is. And we need to make our voice heard to get changed, for change to happen. But in my belief, there's a way to do it and to do it correctly. Now, for those that do watch kind of the online streaming, and some of it did hit a lot of the main news channels as well on a global basis, I think we have to be thoughtful about how we protest our concerns. Now, here, StreamAid, we're here talking about things that we are doing and others can do. And we're hoping that people enjoy the show, and maybe they take a 2-minute shower, or maybe a 3 minute and 30 seconds listening to Jacob. Maybe they, think about changing their diet slightly, maybe recycling more, whatever that's going to be. These small things make big differences. But I don't think we should be going along and causing chaos. I don't think we should be going out there and, protesting and causing disruption to everybody else. We need to get our message heard, but I think there's a right way and a wrong way of doing it. So I've found a few videos, which were these live streams that happened as an event unfolded. Now, these have different purposes, but they all kind of link back: oil, food, animals, etc. So I'm going to play one of the first videos and just see what your reactions are to this. Do you think this is right? Do you think this is wrong? So this first video is in Waitrose. This is happening, by the way, all around the country. It's called milk pouring. And what's happening? People are just going in, grabbing milk off the shelf, undoing it, and just throwing it all around the shop floor to try and make their point. So they're basically, these individuals are calling on the government to give us a livable future, plant-based future. So it goes back to your whole plant-based food. So let's have a look at this little video. Tell me what you think. Is this the right way we should be acting?
For more greenhouse gas emissions than the oil giants like Exxon, Shell, and BP, the top 4 dairy companies are responsible for the majority of methane emissions.
I won't play all of this. Get the idea what's going on here. Now, security have come over and quite clearly saying, we have to stop this now. They carry on. Pouring milk. This guy on the right here is kind of thinking he's like a runner now. He's kind of getting out of the picture. Okay, more milk pouring. And it doesn't stop. It's about a minute long. We're not going to play the whole thing. Get so. Question mark. Is that the right way to act? I mean, when I first saw this, I kind of smiled and I thought, oh, come on, teenagers, young, people want to get their message across. But that's disruption. In a world where food is in short supply at times, where food banks are, wanting, as much as possible, there's people that can't afford to live. But that is what's now happening. And this is not one isolated incident. It's happening all around the country. What's your thoughts on that video while I load the next one in? What do you think?
I love the guy walking up to him and just like, I thought he was just going to, can I just have half 2%?
He's security. He looks like he's doing the shopping. When he turns around, he's got his headset on and that. He's got security.
His basket's not fooling anyone, right? He's got his FBI style bombs on the
He's
go.
been caught out there, hasn't he?
And I think this raises an interesting point, right? So on the one half, why are we a bit outraged that some youngsters are pouring milk all over Waitrose, where the big fuel companies and governments are pillaging the planet for the benefit of the few, right? So I think it might be disruptive, but I think we need a bit more blooming disruption.
Okay, I get that. Make a point. Make a point. Now there's a little bit of spilt milk.
Shouldn't protests be disruptive? Isn't that the idea of them?
Well, but there's a difference of disruptive and then taking it to the elements of criminal damage. Okay. Because if someone come along and threw stuff all over your house and put your windows in, or threw a petrol bomb at your house, you wouldn't be too happy. And that is now criminal. It endangers lives and people. So I think there's a way of protesting, but where is that ante? Some milk on the floor, not the end of the world.
All the time, though, don't we? Or we hear it all the time. It's like, you get politicians trotting out the whole, I've got nothing against people protesting, but as long as it's peaceful. And the thing is, peaceful protests, everybody ignores.
Yeah.
They ignore it. You see a bunch of people walking down the street waving banners and just behaving. All right, you just let them go and then drive off. I mean, Nick, you've been caught in, up in protest before. I mean, they're there to make a point.
Well, let's see the next video, okay? And then I'll show you the after effects in a still image. Listen to some of the words that are used here, by the way, in the very first part of the video. Here we go.
We're a non-violent civil disobedience movement. You can tell from the tank top. We know that the changes in the law, the injunctions against us are irrelevant in comparison with mass starvation, with the genocidal policies that our government is pushing for, with their 100 new fossil fuel licenses.
Okay, I won't play any more of that, but you kind of got the idea. These are all available online in the normal places. You can go and see them. Let me show you the outcome of what they did here. Okay, this is an Aston Martin garage in Hyde Park, covered in paint. Now, to me, that's criminal. And I get you've got to get your message across, as what I've said, but that's disruption to business. Okay, so I've upped the ante one step. Let's look at another video where I think it's been taken, something that is priceless. Well, it probably isn't priceless as such, but with the right amount of money, you could probably buy this, but you're not going to want it the way it looks now. This particular one is Vincent van Gogh's Sunflowers. You'll recognize the picture, super famous. These activists went in protesting about fossil fuels. Look what happened here. Tell me this is right, and tell me that getting your voice and your message across should be done in this way. Let's have a look. Now, here comes the super glue, by the way, just to let you know what's going on here. Okay, so now super gluing the hands up, and next minute, there we are, we're stuck to the wall now.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people?
Now, I'll give her a due. She's a very good speaker. But what's your opinions on that? Do you think they should be prosecuted? They're willing to go to prison for that.
I think we're missing the point.
I was going to point of order on that as well, is that there was glass covering that painting. That wasn't straight onto the canvas. It was just all they ruined was some glass on the frame.
It's the new Andy Warhol, right? He made a fortune out of paintings like that. So I think we're missing the point. Okay, so by all means, protests, varying degrees of protests, some more kind of aggressive than others, more disruptive than others. But the underlying point of all of those protests are, we're trying to save the planet here. We're trying to save absolutely everyone who's ever going to be alive in the future. Okay, that old adage, you can't make an omelette without cracking a few eggs. Okay, that still exists. I'm not saying, oh yeah, I want people to come and throw paint on this and do stuff like that. However, I think the protesters will be vilified for, oh, I can't believe you did that, and the message will be lost. So I'm not saying it's the right way, but it's easy for the media to distract from the actual message by saying, isn't that bad?
That's a good point.
I agree with that. I think the message will get lost in translation because it's going to be focused on the damage that they've created. Today, we had protesters climbing up the Dartford Bridge between Essex and Kent, and the disruption that caused was absolute mayhem. Now, okay, that's a little bit of disruption, but these are people who are going to work. These are people that need to earn a living. These are doctors, nurses, police who are stuck in that traffic, cannot do their job, which endangers other people's lives. People could have died today because their selfishness. Now, I know the big picture here is, well, what's the world worth? What should we be doing? But how far are we allowing, and how far are we going to stretch that rubber band to make our voice heard? Because
people are dying because of selfishness. Right, yeah. And not the people on the Dartford crossing, but people are dying every single day ridiculous numbers
if it
because
was your
of
if it was your
previous
family
self-love.
member, if it was your family member, if it was your daughter, your son, your mum, your dad.
I get it. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, the point I'm trying to get across here with this kind of process really is we need to save the planet. We need to do things that are going to have change. But in my opinion, we should do it in a right way. You know, we don't go around causing chaos, disruption, you know, causing things. I mean, the UK government do that. We've got plenty of disruption going on, and they're not throwing things. They're just talking about things and saying the wrong things at the wrong time. But the point I'm making is there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And if we keep doing things like this, all it's going to do is just rile people up even more to ignore it and say, lock them up. I'm not going to think about the change that needs to happen. I'm just going to carry on my day because there's too many twerps out there.
Well,
but then there's a responsibility for people like us to amplify the voices and ensure that the message, the actual message of, you know, throwing paint on Aston Martin, throwing paint on Van Gogh's sunflower, is put out there. We've got the power to be able to do that now, and drown those voices, or, you know, the TV stations, radios saying, "Oh, look at how much damage they've done," and all the rest of it. That's our responsibility. But we can't do it just by having a conversation. We have to have the protest to, you know, to work alongside, you know, because the right people will hear our message.
A protest, I think, absolutely agreeable. I think people should have the right to protest, but how that's done, how that's conducted, I think should be thought about. And, you know, there should be penalties for the people that do things to the extreme, because at one day it's going to be live.
Oh, and here. Government,
how do
media companies, oil companies, etc., etc. The injustice, the balance isn't there either. I totally get it. I don't know what the answer is, but it leads very well on to May King section. May King, what have you got for us?
Well, whilst I was tweeting there, I wanted to draw attention to a Guardian article. So my segment is, what would Greta Thunberg do? And she's written a book with some incredible collaborators to give us 9 different things that we can do. And it's very hard hitting, you know, similar to the, you know, Merchants of Doubt book. We need to be brave in listening to the points that need to be done. But they are hard hitting. Not quite sure what we can do as individuals to, you know, to raise publicity about the points made. Well, we can vote accordingly, I suppose. We can talk like we are right now and amplify the voices that way. But I just wanted to raise a couple of things. I mean, 9 of them, they were from writers and activists, including Thomas Piketty, Naomi Klein, Bill McKibben, and Naomi Klein says, take the money out of politics. You know, there's no, there is one thing that would stop the planet's warming, and it will be reining in the power of transnational capital over governments. You know, financially reward and punish lawmakers. This will be the single biggest barrier to progress. She mentions having to ban corporate campaign donations, direct and indirect, stop the revolving door from corporate lobbyists and lawmakers. So you can see that, you know, as a reader, we can agree to all of that, but how do we stop that? You know, how do we stop the lobbyists, and how do we stop the lack of punishment at the moment? I think that's my that was my question. Like I say, we could vote accordingly. That's one of the things that we can do. One of the other thing, I mean, the other things. Some of the points were just incredible, but I won't go into them all. But one of them was by Thomas Piketty. He's an economist and quite simple, really, and very on vogue at the moment. We need to tax the wealthy properly. To combat climate change, we must massively invest to decarbonise our transport, energy and production systems. We need billions of euros for that. The most interesting stat that he ended on was at the global level, 10% of the population contributes to about half of all emissions. And there are also large pollution inequalities within each country. That just packed a punch. It stunned me. Didn't quite know what to do with that knowledge, to be honest. Don't know what your thoughts are on those two.
Say that again,
points
mate.
there.
What was the last point again?
10% of the population contributes to half of all emissions at the global level.
Right. So that 10% of the population being presumably big business, or that kind of thing. That's what the inference is, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing, and I think absolutely we need to take the money out of politics. I also think you need to stop. You need to have time limits on people serving in politics as well. I think that people get a little bit too old and embedded in their own sort of points of view.
38 days, okay. Quasi 38 days. That was a perfect time limit.
Seems to be. Yeah, it seems to be about right, isn't it? It's what was it? Less than David Blaine, wasn't it?
Yeah, David Blaine lasted longer in his box, buried alive, than Kwasi Kwarteng remained in power.
Fantastic. But yeah, I mean, shorter term limits and taking the money out of politics is absolutely, and taxing the rich. No arguments there, I don't think. Anybody?
The inference from 10% of the world's population responsible for half the emissions, it does look like big business are doing a lot of work, but also contributing to the emissions in a massive way. So yeah, tax accordingly.
Yeah,
right? And there is a real kind of you don't have to be blooming Einstein to look at the way tax works and think, well, that doesn't seem very fair. And think, well, that just seems to protect the wealthy. What's going on there? And if you're really wealthy and you're paying a lot of tax, then fair enough. Okay. But if you're really wealthy and you're not paying a lot of tax, I'm very interested to know, how on earth do you sleep at night?
I thought you were going to say, how on earth do you do it? Let me know. I thought that's what Nick was going to say then.
Give her accountant.
Yeah, new accountant required. I agree with it. Tax, potentially the wealthy, these big businesses, or incentivize. So rather than tax, because what's that tax money going to do? So let's just say for energy company, one of the reasons this tax wasn't put into place here in the UK is because they know if they take all the money off them in tax, they're not going to innovate and then do something better, i.e., renewable energy, wind farms, solar farms, whatever it's going to be. So what they need to do is just get the balance. So I'm not saying don't tax them, use some of that, but as long as that tax money is used to do things better, greener.
Yes.
Or say to them, you've got to take a certain element of your profits, whatever X will be, that percentage, and you must reinvest that into innovative ideas and solutions and the new green wave of energy, whatever that will be. So I don't believe always it's about just taking money from people, because it's great, we take all the money, but what do we do with it? Where do we spend it? How does it get spent? And we all know middle management in government politics take a lot of that cash, by operational and running costs. So we need to just reinvest it into the right things. And that's, I think, is one of the big problems. We need to decide what the right things are and then get them to invest into it.
David for PM.
Yeah.
Not at this rate. They don't last long enough. I mean, I'll only do a week probably.
Yeah, that'd be enough.
I just want to raise this this little nugget as well that I picked up this week. Coca-Cola are sponsoring COP27. Anybody else see anything wrong with that?
That's like McDonald's sponsoring children's football kits.
Or the Olympics, like they did.
Right.
So it's no surprise, right? No surprise
Greenwashing.
that big business, big money gets their own way, massive amount of lobbyists. Greed, unfortunately, wins the day. Right? Someone somewhere, big money, going in their pockets. Right? That if, let's say, if you didn't tax heavily because the organization was going to innovate, let's say an energy company was going to innovate, and there is a big push that the world seems to think that technology is going to save us all. Okay, they've been thinking that for a long, long time, and we're heading in a good direction, maybe with tech, but maybe not. I don't think they would use all the money to innovate. I think they'd use all their money to buy yachts and go on fancy holidays and drive around in Lamborghinis.
But they can't,
as well as innovate too. I think greed. Very few organizations have a kind of, we don't need any more money, we need to do something good.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, Nick, but that's kind of taking a very kind of polar view of it. If they're told that money must be invested in innovation and it's accountable and accounted for, and they have to be able to demonstrate that in, you know, in their annual reports and stuff like that, and it's overlooked by a agency, you know, the KPMGs of this world, which I know have got their flaws and all that as well, but you know, it's censored information that is checked, because at the end of the day, you can tax it, it goes into the government, and then it gets wasted probably anyway. So we might as well make sure that we're using it for the right reasons to innovate. And innovation doesn't necessarily have to be technology based, but it probably will be. But it needs to look at other ways, and energy generation is just one of those. Bringing the cost of food down, you know, it could be another one, whatever it's going to be. That's where I think that tax money, call it a tax, should be spent, not just taken away from the companies and then put into the coffers and then, oh, well, what should we spend this money on? Let's make a point of what it's going to be spent on at the beginning.
Like it. And I'm thoroughly enjoying this spirited conversation, and hopefully our lovely audience, it's sparking thoughts and considerations to take the discussions on further. Very mindful of time. Would you like to just summarize your takeaways? We'll take it in turns, and then I'll summarize the show, and then we'll bring it to a close. Keith, one big takeaway from the show? No pressure.
Yeah, I think that the main thing is what I would love to do is I would recommend everybody reads that the book that you've The Merchants of Doubt. Get yourself a copy, read it on Kindle, read it, borrow it like from a library, whatever you can do. All right, and just familiarize yourself with the arguments, and then all these discussions that we've been having, they can then start from a fact-based, science-based place, rather than just listening to the voices of doubt or the voices of big money and stuff like that. Get yourself familiar with the argument, and then you can start to work out a plan. But you can't do anything without doing that first.
Knowledge is power. Thank you, Keith. David, what's your big takeaway, my friend?
Oh, there's lots of takeaways that have come from this episode. More of this to come in future weeks, I'm sure. So my Monday night takeaway. Look, as I said, we've got to have a voice, but combined, we can have a big voice. Individually, causing disruption doesn't give us a big voice. So what it means is we all need to get together. We all need to agree on a strategy and a way forwards. We all need to work for the future of our planet and our children and our children's children. But I don't think we need to do that through disruption and causing havoc. I think we need to do it in a professional way that can be listened and everybody comes on board together. Politicians answer.
Okie dokie. Thank you very much. Together we can do it. May King, final takeaway from you.
I'm actually going to counteract that because I don't think we need a place to protest. And so, you know, if we don't have the disruption, we won't be talking about it. And, you know, so that's the thing that I really want to, you know, share from today. I hope that people will watch, watch our show today, listen to Keith's podcast, read the book, and talk about it. You know, that's what we can do. To help to help climate change. that's the takeaway that I have from today.
I think we've just got to stop. We've got to agree the terms of the discussion that we need to have. I think that's the most important thing, is that we all start from the same place, because we're all coming at this argument from different areas, and nobody has set the stall out to say these are the things that we need to do. Nobody's prioritized it because everybody's shouting over each other. So that's my big issue with this.
Well, thank you very much, David, Keith, and May King. This has been a Stream Aid Live Monday night takeaway. Lots of conversation, lots of thoughts and ideas. Hopefully it sparks conversations where you are. Hopefully we can start to be a bit more proactive. One more thing, small changes do add up if we all get involved. And let's see if we can all get behind the right voices, the knowledgeable voices, and amplify those in the right direction. More shows coming up in the near future. Get involved. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know your ideas, your big takeaways, and don't be surprised if we include them in a future show. David, have you got anything to play us out?
We do. We have the final play out of Jacob ready. And just for those that don't or didn't pick up at the earlier of the show, Jacob is our advocate for our music. So he's played us in. He's going to play us out with The World Is Ours.
Time to have a shower.
Time to have a shower.
Bring it on.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Why does it feel so cold when it's too warm outside?
Why do we turn away as the water starts to rise?
Why do we push others down as we're floating in the tides?
So what's the point in waiting if we just don't have the time? But we're standing in the fire. We can put it out if we keep on shouting. So show me you got the power to change. If it shines or showers, nothing can get in your way. The world is ours. We all do wrong. We've got to fix our faults before we criticize. It all starts with you. What's the point in choice if we can't decide?
And we know it all along. It's all our fault that we close our eyes. We can hit restart. All you gotta do is look inside.
You got the power to change. If it shines or showers, nothing can get in your way. The world is ours. Before the world falls apart, take it down where it can't make a sound.
you.